Hello and welcome to That British Homestead. My name's Nick, and today I'm going to be fertilising the allotment. Exciting stuff. But before we get to that, we can't put down any poo until we clean up all of these weeds. So heave ho, I'm pulling them up. This is a load of different brambles here, and I've got a load of bindweed on this particular allotment. Yes, I've done amazing getting rid of lots of the bindweed, but it is going under this plastic, so we're going to have to pull it up. Of course, I don't know this yet because I'm not psychic, but you can see it along the top there. There's quite a bit of bindweed. This is brambles. They're very common here in the UK. I'm wearing really thick gloves, so they are not prickling me, but they are very prickly. I'm actually going to use these as a very, very great addition to the bonfire because, as you know, remember the 5th of November, it's coming up, and we have some friends coming over from the allotment to have a barbecue and watch the fireworks. There's a massive fireworks display in the field next to us, so we're going to happily watch that and have a nice barbecue. It just happens to be on that night. Of course, we wouldn't just be standing here for free and watching it. That'd be naughty. We just happened to do some midnight gardening, and whoops-a-daisy, there's some fireworks. Oh, it's rude not to look. So we're going to be pulling these brambles up. Now, I really like these brambles. I have to say, I really quite like the fact that they are a very, very early blackberry. They are much nicer than the raspberries as well that I grow on my allotment. I don't know why. It's just maybe because, it's like something from your childhood. I remember very, very much going along by where I used to live. There was a tennis court, and on that tennis course it was surrounded by brambles, and the brambles that grow on the tarmac were just amazing. They were huge and really nice, probably all that fox's wee fertilising them, but they were so lovely, and I feel like that just pushes me back to then, and I love the brambles. So I'm like in two minds. Should I pull them out, or should I turn this into some sort of hedgerow? I'm not 100% sure. I will be getting rid of the bindweed, and I will be getting rid of any brambles that go onto the black plastic for sure, but I haven't really decided yet because, to be honest, I've been thinking about hedgerows and how important they are for the British farm, and how we don't really do that in the allotment, and maybe we should. It would be a really great place to keep wildlife, etc. It's also a great place for rabbits to hide out, and I think by now everybody knows my deep hatred for them cute, adorable bunnies. They're really cute unless they're on your allotment plot eating everything you sow. I'm quite lucky because I wasn't as affected as other people because I netted my area, and I did put up some defences for them basically, and some repellent. And basically here I'm just going to be putting up this black plastic. Now underneath I've got a lot of soil obviously, but a lot of bindweed has been growing under. We're going to be pulling this up. We're going to be sweeping off all of this debris on top because there's a lot of tomatoes which Jasmine has helpfully crushed into black plastic, and basically I'm going to be taking up anything that needs to be taken up. This was incredibly hard work. I didn't know that this was going to be so difficult. I was absolutely sweating buckets when I finished this. It was a bit of a heave-ho. So, although this is sped up, so I don't want you thinking, wow, what's she going about? This was really easy. I struggled. As you can see, I'm just beginning to struggle here. Some of the brambles were growing over, so I'm just going to pull them back, as you can see. And there are tons of bindweed. I didn't lie, did I? So, I've always thought that bindweed is because it binds up, but look at this. It genuinely looks like rope. I was actually thinking, my goodness, can't I use this for something? It is ridiculous, but because it's bindweed, it's going on the burn pile, okay? That burn pile was not going to go to waste. Ash is incredibly good for growing, so I'm going to burn that big pile. I'm going to spread out that ash, and then I'm going to grow straight on top of it. Of course, put some lovely horse manure on top. Horse manure is absolutely fantastic for the soil. It brings all the worms up. The worms will come and do all the hard work for you. I'm always thinking that here, or on any allotment or any sort of growing situation, there's stuff that you don't enjoy doing, right? I don't enjoy doing this either. A couple of pigs would love doing this, but I do not. Okay, can't have pigs on the allotment. I asked, they said no. But if you have like a bird or anything like that, then they love doing certain things like spreading it out. So get the animals to do it. So I'm putting lots of this debris into the chicken coop, and they are turning that into fertilizer for me. So it is always great to use an animal to do what you can't be doing yourself. And for example, worms will happily bring all all of this stuff down into the soil, which allows me not to have to dig it, okay? Digging is long, tediously and hard. I really dislike doing the digging. I watched my nan do it for years as she really struggled, bless her, when I was about Jasmine's age. So I like to let them do the hard work, okay? They will be bringing all of this down into the soil, and they will be aerating the soil by making little hollows. So that's what I'm going to leave them to do. That's their business, not mine. So I'm going to allow them to do that. Now, if you put the black plastic down and you did not allow them to have that gap between the black plastic and the new nutrients on top, you're not going to have the nutrients from the bottom leading back up to the top. So it is important to understand that you are going to need them to come back up to the top to bring and incorporate that nutrient into the soil that is already there. So one thing that Jasmine absolutely loves to do here on the allotment is fertilise, and as you can see, she is fertilising with a powdered fertiliser. This is horn and bone meal. It is really excellent for new plants and for nitrogen for the soil. She absolutely loves helping out and spreading it. It's probably her favourite thing to do. Now, this is horse manure from a friend of stables. This has been broken down for a incredibly long time. This has absolutely no smell to it. It is completely, utterly soil now. Okay, do you see the colour of that? That is beautiful coloured soil. It is a little bit wetter than the first time I brought it down to the allotment because it's been raining like a good one, but that soil is so rich in organic matter. It's going to retain moisture really, really well. It's going to hold on to the moisture. So when we have dry spells like we did this year, this soil is going to work really fantastically. So I'm going to go ahead and put a healthy dressing over the top. The dust that you saw me put down, the dusty stuff, was hoof and horn meal. So that's a byproduct of obviously the meat industry. If you're not comfortable with that, there are other alternatives such as kelp meal, which is basically ground up seaweed. Absolutely fantastic for the soil. I love it. It smells like Southend. I just love that. So here I'm also putting down neem oil granules, which is a very natural, unharmful, non-toxic way of getting rid of moles. You probably watched my videos and know that I had a mole, right? And I caught it, didn't I? Do you remember? And then I felt so bad. It was looking at me and I was looking at it, and off it walked. So, to be honest, I screamed and screamed and screamed and screamed because they look like rats. But anyway, this is how we're getting rid of our mole. It's just making the soil taste awful. Okay, neem oil tastes awful. It's crawling around the earth, eating it, trying to find worms, and all it can taste is neem oil, and it thinks, this is disgusting, I'm going to go next door. So that's all we want. What I've found with them granules is it says to put it directly on top of the soil, and it says like make sure you leave it a root to get out, but it doesn't work like that. You've got to dig down and do it into the burrow. I've done that a few times, and to be honest, it has mostly gone. So if I find any more, I just go ahead and pour it down its hole or dig up the tunnel and then go ahead and put it there. As you can see, there's some sort of trail across this bit of allotment as well. It has collapsed itself, but I will put a sprinkle of it on there as well, just to make sure that I don't have any issues with any rodents or moles or anything like that. I understand that they do have a fantastic job in the ecosystem, completely agree with that, and if they suck to the paths, I wouldn't mind. When it's in the chicken coop, it can have at it. I don't mind. It doesn't bother the chickens, and it doesn't bother me. However, when it destroys all your crops that you've spent hours and days and months and things looking after, it does kind of upset you a little bit. Now I'm just going ahead here and weeding it a little bit. It is a little bit difficult to pull this black plastic because of the weeds going here and going through the side. Now, I'm not putting as much horse manure down as possible. I understand that. I probably should have done about triple this on this particular allotment patch, but it is very difficult to get fertiliser down here. I can, of course, pull this up in a couple of months' time and redo it, so I'm not really that fussed about it. I've put less granule fertiliser on here last year and grown an abundance, as you probably know from my last videos. They've been absolutely fantastic fantastic this summer. I can't believe how well I've done. I generally didn't think it'd be doing this well, and all I've been using is granule fertiliser, so this is going to give it a big boom. I'm looking for soil structure here though, okay? As a geologist, I can tell you, you dig the soil, you ruin the structure, and remember, I love my tardigrades, so we are feeding them tardigrades, and we're pulling out all that bindweed. Look at it, it is ridiculous. It literally looks like something I could bind someone with, okay? But it's going to go once again onto that burn pile, and it's going to be moved out of the way. Now, as I pull back this black plastic, there's a load of stuff trapped in it. I will eventually, not today, when I'm doing this, but today where I'm recording this, I've actually gone through and swept the black plastic, so do not worry if you see any compost and stuff like that on there. It will be swept up in due course, because Jasmine's once again very, very helpful. Thank you, Jasmine. She's gone through and squished all of those lovely tomatoes onto the black plastic, which makes it so much more, let me think of the right words, it makes it more interesting to clear up those rotten tomatoes, which is always fun. But the tomatoes go to the chickens, and the chickens do appreciate them because they love the seeds. Now, as you can see, I'm picking up all of this bindweed and some nettles and things. I'm wearing my big thick gloves. These gloves, by the way, I think they were a £5 from Asda. Best buy ever, honestly, right? I bought them thinking, £5, that's well expensive, because I am as tight as, and they're worth every single penny. Every single penny. What a bargain. I'm so happy that I bought them, because nothing stings you, nothing prickles you through them. They are amazing, okay? You can't even, the only problem I have with them is you can't actually feel your hands. So you can hold a stinging nettle and touch your leg with it, and you're like, why is that stinging me? I haven't got anything in my hands. When you have, you've got a handful full of stinging nettles. I know that because I did that today. Now, I'm going to go ahead and pull this plastic. It is getting very heavy, because on the side there seems to be an accumulation of soil, as you can see, because I put a load of the royal eye, being Robert, he put a load of wood chip over there, and the wood chip is very, 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 very thick, because it works as a lovely mulch, although all the weeds do end up growing through it. This is the bindweed. Now remember, if that black plastic wasn't there, the bindweed would have taken over this area. I don't think I'd have been able to grow any at all, any form of tomatoes on this, because of this bindweed. As you can see, it is so prolific here, and I had no idea, because obviously the black plastic, but it is absolutely everywhere. So I'm going to go through and I'm just going to picking it up just to weaken the plant. Of course, it's been growing with no sunlight, so it has weakened it greatly. Now, the more I pull it out, the more it will get weaker. Over time, this will weaken this area. Now, as you can see, it is just like wire, isn't it? It is ridiculously bendy and ridiculously plentiful in this particular allotment, which is quite ironic, because the allotment next door doesn't have pretty much no bindweed at all. So it is funny how you have microclimates in all different areas. Now, this will be something that I'll tackle over time. Over time, this will weaken. Over time, this will get better, okay? I'm not looking for like a today problem. I could go and put Roundup on the entire allotment, wait for a few months, and then start growing, and there'll be no bindweed left. I could do that. However, I wouldn't want to breathe in Roundup or use Roundup or anything like that. Not saying that if you use it, it's a bad thing. I'm just saying, me personally, I just don't feel comfortable with it. So therefore, I'm just going to do it the brute force way of every time I do this, I'm going to pull up the black plastic, pick it out, and see how it goes from there. I'm not looking for an absolutely perfect allotment. I have no interest of having one of these allotments that could be on some sort of cover of some magazine. I mean, it'd be amazing if I could, but in reality, I do have a very time consuming job, and I have the lovely Jasmine and all my animals and things like that. If I had one allotment, I do think that it'd be way more weed free, but I decided to get two because nobody wanted the one next door due to the state of it. And to be honest, I'm kind of coming around to the understanding of why they would say that. So as I said, I'm just going to go through and remove as much of this bindweed as possible. You can go ahead and drown it. If you put it 3 weeks into water, it will start to break down, and then you can use it as either a compost tea or you could just go ahead and pour it into your compost. But if you go ahead and compost this and it doesn't get up to plus 60 degrees, then you will have an issue with it growing back. So make sure that you're not put it in the compost unless it gets up to that temperature. So now I've got some more of this hoof and horn meal. I use this every single time I'm laying plastic. I always like to use at least 2 granule fertilizers. The second one is chicken manure. The chicken manure is really important as well because it has lots of nitrogen. And once again, I'm just going to be putting this neem oil granules down onto the ground to stop any vermin coming back into their burrows. Now, this here is, you can really see the difference between the two soils. The original soil here is really depleted. Remember, 70 years people have been growing on this ground and not giving it back. I was speaking to some of my other allotmenteers down here, and they say that pretty much nobody brings horse manure down here or any form of soil down here, and lots of people just grow on the same ground, on the same ground, on the same ground, on the same ground without giving anything back. I don't know what the last people on this allotment were like, or if they neutralise. The ground so far has been really fantastic. On the other side of the allotment, it does have an issue with, I can't grow onions, okay, because it has white fungus. However, there's nothing I can say about this allotment so far apart from the white fungus, but that's going to be very, very, very common in a place that has been growing for so many years. But so far, I'm really impressed, guys. I was so shocked of how many tomatoes and peppers and things, and the size of the peppers that I was growing. I mean, I grew several that were the size of my head. It's just a joke. But I want to make sure that I go through and give my plants the best start as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and do this because I want to be growing some cabbages in this soil. I'm going to be using the black plastic again until I have a sort of insurance that I'm going to have less and less weeds. Now, the no dig method does reduce the amount of weeds. That is absolutely true. But I don't have half enough cardboard as I need to cover this plot, and I don't have enough manure to go over the top because you do need a few inches of it. Now, I am going to go ahead and do this. I might do it again in the spring. I'll see how it's going. But at the moment, I'm really happy with it. And I've just planted in this today, and I was really rather happy with how this is broken down. Some of this is very hard, as you can see, but it's still really good stuff, okay? That was one bag that I don't know why I decided to take that, but it was like the top bit, which is dried out a lot. As you can see, this is very crumbly and really lovely stuff, and it is all in bags. These bags have been upcycled, so the person that I got them from obviously loves a nice open fire. Who doesn't? And so I've put them into the bags. Now, guys, if you're going to do this yourself, I wouldn't suggest using these type of bags because they have sulfur as a contaminant within coal, and it isn't particularly good for you. But it's only about going to be very much a trace in this. It was either that or not getting it, or put it directly in my car, which I think my partner would have gone crazy at. He doesn't actually, well, he kind of knows, but he doesn't actually know how much horse manure I actually fit into my car at any given time. So I don't think he'd like it if it was directly on the seats instead of in bags. So as you can see, some of this stuff has lots of hay in it, which is very exciting. Once again, thinking about the worms will come up to the surface and they will bring that back down to the bottom. Now, this stuff had tons of little red wrigglers in it, as you know, super important for decomposition, but this has broken down completely. It is important that you break horse manure down absolutely completely, on the basis that if you do not, it will burn your plants. This is what we call hot composting. We talked about this a little bit before. Hot composting is when it has too much nitrogen, it burns your plants, it will actually kill your plants. So it's really important that you don't put your plants straight into something like fresh manure, because it will kill them, damage them, or stunt them. You will tell this by the leaves discolouring, losing leaves, stunted growth, etc. But you can actually use it as your advantage. If you have well rotted stuff on top, you can grow stuff like sweet, hot loving peppers and things like that, which will grow wonderfully on a compost heap. However, you don't want to make sure that you put their roots straight into decomposing material, because it will have a massive effect on on your plant and it will stunt it. As you see, Jasmine's been actually really well today. This is Jasmine just being absolutely amazing. She's been so helpful. I've shown her a little worm there. She does like finding all the creepy crawlies and things like that, which is really nice. She's very much hands on and she likes to find all the things like that. Now, as you can see, I'm pulling up all of this bindweed still. It's like the gift that keeps on giving. There are other bits that I need to address here as well. For example, I have only just pulled some plants out of the ground through the black plastic, so all of their roots will be left in the ground to break down and provide food for worms and microbes. It's really important that your worms and your microbiome of your soil are being fed. As you can see, once again, we've got hoof and hornmeal, whatever's going on the ground. I mean, most of that's going up into the air, but it's fine. It is producing a whole entire feast for all of this microbiome. I'm always thinking, don't feed your plants, always feed your soil. That's like my mantra when I'm doing any gardening. I don't worry about what the plants are going to eat. As long as you're feeding your soil, you're building structure of your soil, and you're giving your bacteria something to feast on, it will be absolutely fine. So now I'm just going to go ahead and pull back this black plastic. As you can see, there is so much stuff left on here. There's even a coffee cup there. Oh man, I love coffee. And basically this is hard work. It is very heavy because I should have cleared it first. I know. Imagine leaving a massive stick in the middle. And it got caught and I have to cut it. Really? Terrible. So I am really struggling with this, but it's going to cut down how much weeding I'm doing. Remember, this weeding is meant to be, and a pocket full of bindweed. This is meant to be a fun activity for us, so we don't want to be doing too much weeding. Jasmine will not help with weeding, not even a little bit. She loves to harvest, don't get me wrong. She absolutely salivated today when we had to harvest some carrots and I had to explain to her that only the big ones we were harvesting, but she does not like weeding. So weeding's all down to mummy, as it should be. It is like the ironing of the gardening world. I know. It has to be done. It's really important. But sometimes you don't want to do it. You want to do the nice things like harvesting. Now, this reduces my weed load down massively. Yes, I do have to. I think I weeded this like 3 or 4 times and that was it. They were all gone. I did get quite a few weeds going through the holes, but honestly, nothing compared to if the plastic wasn't there. This helps me massively, and I know that weeding is therapeutic, and it can be therapeutic, and it is quite fun to do, and you just turn off and go into like repetitive tasks. It is nice, as you can see me doing here, but if this was just plain ground, I don't think I'd be able to cope, guys, because it is such a hard undertaking, especially like I said, with other family and life commitments. Now, I am trying to pick up all of these sort of perennial weeds and get rid of them and pin back down this fabric. We have crazy winds, okay? Winds that are ridiculously fast and ridiculously dangerous. I had an entire greenhouse smashed to smithereens by the last wind, I think storm, which was Ennis, I can't remember. It was a really bad wind, guys, and it was quite detrimental for lots of people. It was dangerous down here. We had a shed that was actually lifted up and hit through a fence onto someone's plot. So imagine if you were there. Somebody else said to me, do you mind helping me pick up the glass? I was like, did your greenhouse break? And they were like, no, that's not my greenhouse, that's my neighbour's. Absolutely scary stuff, I know.